Mayor is the editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post, and he joins us now. Avi, I just want to play what the president said last week and contrast it with what he said on CBS last night. Listen here.
Israel has the right to defend itself and its people. Full stop.
I think that it would be a mistake for Israel to occupy Gaza again.
So last week he says that the United States is behind Israel, full stop. Last night, I don't think it would be a good idea for Israel to reoccupy Gaza. The big question in a lot of people's minds is that if the IDF does decimate Hamas to the degree that Benjamin Netanyahu says it needs to be, and so many people here in Israel we've talked to say it needs to be, what comes next? Does Israel have to occupy Gaza, at least for a period of time?
I think that's the question a lot of Israelis are asking themselves. And I think for many years, the presumption was that we can keep Hamas in power and we shouldn't try to bring them down because the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know, right? So Hamas may be a horrific terrorist organization with genocidal aims and constantly attempting to murder Jews, but it's basically pragmatic and all it really wants is to govern its territory, and perhaps with economic incentives it could be reined in. And what we saw last weekend was an organization that in many respects is worse than ISIS. And that's an organization that cannot be reasoned with, and it just needs to be wiped off the map. And so I think that's where a lot of Israelis are at right now. I know there are some who are thinking about what comes next, but quite frankly, the immediate priority is just decimating that organization, making sure it doesn't have the capacity to carry a massacre like last weekend ever again.
Yeah, we've talked to a lot of people since we got in on Saturday, including the mother of a young man who was nearly killed in an attack at his kibbutz in Kerem Shalom, way down south near the very tip of Gaza where it abuts the Egyptian border. She basically said that, we played this game, Israel has at least, of cat and mouse with Hamas, and that it has to end, that this can't go on any longer.
Right. I think many Israelis feel that, as you said, we've been through so many rounds of this before, and Hamas has somehow retained its capacity to kill Israelis. It can't happen again. This needs to be the end of these rounds of fighting. So, yes, of course, we need to worry about what happens next. It's certainly possible that another Islamist organization could come in Hamas's place. That wouldn't be great, but Hamas just needs to be decimated. I think that's how many Israelis feel right now.
I was talking yesterday with the former ambassador to the U.S., Michael Oren, who you'll see in just a couple of minutes. And he thought, you can try to decimate Hamas, but like ISIS, you can crush it, but it'll start to grow back up again because the roots are very, very deep. And these are not organizations that are living in the modern world. He told me that he spent a couple of years when he was working on his PhD reading ancient Islamic texts. And those are the papers, those are the books that these Islamic terrorists are reading.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's certainly true that Hamas is not representative of all Palestinians or all Muslims or all Arabs, but they come from this place, this ideological place that is simply suffused with hatred, with a genocidal desire to murder all Jews. They say so quite openly. It's in their charter, and they've never disavowed that charter. It still guides them to this day. I can tell you, I was in one of the kibbutzim earlier today, one of the communities that was targeted just last week in that massacre, and there were prayer mats. These are, in their mind, they're devout Muslims. They are living what they believe to be Islam. Now, of course, we know that that's a perversion of Islam. Islam, of course, is a religion like any other, and there are good people and bad people. But it's coming from a deep ideological place. They're not going to let go of that ideology anytime soon.
I want to ask you one real quick question just before we go. Tomorrow in the Jerusalem Post, there will be an editorial regarding serving in the IDF. You served in the IDF when you moved from the U.S. to here. This involves Orthodox Jews.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for a long time, there's been a debate within Israel over an exemption that's been granted, particularly ultra-Orthodox Jews, known as Haredi Jews in Israel, from military service. They tend to study religious texts in yeshivas, religious academies, and that's been the source of tremendous contention in Israel because the majority of Israelis do serve in the military. Mm-hmm. And especially right now, when we're in an inflection point, it feels like so many people have been mobilized, 360,000 reservists, including and of course the regular forces who are at the border. It doesn't feel like the time to talk anymore about that kind of an exemption. And so our position is that once the Knesset resumes its regular work, once things settle down and the dust settles, any talk of an exemption for anyone in the society should fall by the wayside. Everyone should be required to serve in at least some capacity.
Yeah, I mean, the entire country is a threat, and we've seen so many people respond. So.
Absolutely.
Avi, good to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to that editorial tomorrow.
Thank you, John.
All right. Sandra?
Really interesting discussion, John. Thank you. And